Right now, I am doing something quite simple that for 6 months I thought it would be impossible to do again. Basically, what I mean is to be recording this video outside under the sun. And this is a video where I'm going to try to share my story. It's hopefully I'm going to record the video that I wish I had watched when I was suffering, and by sharing my story, I really hope I can help someone who who is right now as desperate as I was for 6 months. By sharing my story, I don't pretend to give medical advice. I am not a doctor. I am a software engineer by profession. Uh, I am not related to any healthcare system, and I don't feel I can be opinionated about what is the best solution for anyone. I think anyone can have can search in medicine for solutions that sometimes are very personal and unique. And I'm just going to try to make a helpful video by sharing my life experience, my story, and I want to I want to share with you something that happened to me last year. I have been waiting 9 months to feel like this the right moment to feel myself in this video. And right now I am in Bangkok, in Thailand, but I am originally from Sevilla, in Spain, which is also my hometown. And yes, I really hope that by sharing my life story, I also help myself, because I really want to put behind this stage of my life. I want to continue embrace the lessons and the gifts that I got from this journey, but at the same time, um, recording this video for me is a symbol of moving to a new phase of my life where I don't see myself a victim anymore of the disease I had, but more like someone who can understand other people um, with the same struggle and the same sorrow that I went through, to try to show empathy and compassion, and to let anyone um, with this disease and this struggle and this suffering to know that you are not alone. In the night of 20th of June 2024, I think I am hardly going to forget that day or that night. I was in bed already. It was late night, and I was probably like doom scrolling or watching a movie in my laptop. I don't really remember. And suddenly I saw like a real, like massive insect, and my first instinct was to try to push it away, but it didn't go away. And in Spain, I thought it could be like a big fly or a big um, mosquito. Mosquitoes in Spain in the summer can be pretty intimidating. Um, so I assumed it was just a fly, but I tried to push it away and it didn't go away. And I I remember I ran to the bathroom to try to put water in my eye, or because I quickly understood that whatever it was inside my eye. I was temporarily living with a friend um, in Sevilla, because my idea was to come to Thailand, and actually everything that I'm going to share um, delayed my desire moving to Thailand. And I was living with a friend temporarily, and he noticed that I entered like panic mode. I went to the bathroom, and for context, I have to explain that maybe it's not very obvious from the video, but this eye is kind of lazy because I had a condition. Well, I still have a condition that is very rare, which is congenital cataracts, and I got surgery to remove the lens, the opaque lens, when I was, I think, 3 years old, in 1989 or something like that. And yeah, all my life I have carried the fear that something would happen to my eyes, and I would be like, okay, this is it, this is it. This has been worsening until I finally get blind, which seems to be my fate. And so, needless to say, it was incredibly scary, not understanding what it was. To try to explain what it was or how it looked like, um, after time, I would call it the alien. But I think the closest depiction I can give is basically like a giant jellyfish or even like octopus a little bit, like with huge tentacles. Um, it also reminded me of the maybe a spider as well, um, or even the circles from the film Arrival by Denis Villeneuve. These heptapods, and they kind of print circles. And the problem I noticed right away also is that it was not static. It was like this kind of like perpetual movement machines, like a Newton's cradle. Like it would move randomly. It didn't matter how much I would move my eye to try to push it somewhere, or if I would close my eyes and try to like blink, it didn't matter. It had its own velocity and its own behavior, and it was unpredictable. And I I remember I really panicked a lot. From the beginning, this was a real issue, severely incapacitating, and with this constant movement, um, my brain would shut down. It was too much information. When you have a PC or a laptop and the heat, the overheat makes the laptop to shut down, that's exactly what my brain did. It was basically too much. And the brain kind of resigned. And I'm going to talk about the brain later as well, because I learned so much from this journey and how the sight, the vision is connected to the brain. But I it was not a matter of having like a giant spot in one of my eyes that would move constantly. Um, it was basically my brain saying, "Okay, this is too much. I can't handle it." So in my daily life, I mentioned before that I am a software engineer by profession. Um, I couldn't have a job. I couldn't cook. Many days I couldn't stand up from my bed because I, I wouldn't trust my own, uh, coordination or movements. If I wanted to go outside, it would have to be like either in the evening or during the night. And even so, every like 2 minutes, I would have to hold like a street lamp or something to rest a little bit because it was too much. Going to the supermarket, a real challenge. It really felt like an impossible mission. Um, of course, like as I said, cooking, doing household chores, uh, pretty much anything. Um, Reading. I love reading books. Almost impossible because I would have the movement of my eyes trying to follow the letters. Every letter was a challenge because I didn't know if it was going to be blurred by my brain. And I am talking about the good hours of the day where I could actually function a little bit. Living in darkness, I would have maybe like 1 or 2 hours per day where I could barely function. Always during the night, I actually tried to have like a kind of a night shift where I would wake up at 7 p.m. when the sunset already happened, and then try to somehow endure during the night, um, watching movies even in my laptop. Sometimes what I would do would be like to watch movies that I know already and having them like a podcast because for example, my one of my favorite films is The Truman Show, so or The Shawshank Redemption, right? I would just watch these films knowing the dialogues already, so it would be like a familiar dialogue that I could listen to and distract myself a little bit. Um, so this was pretty critical. I and also the financial part, the fact that I couldn't hold a job. Um, my first, my first and most important step was accepting my reality. My reality was pretty much unbearable. Mm, I would argue that even if I kept convincing myself that life is worth living, it was genuinely too much, too much. And I, I don't want to get emotional still yet, but I remember the jellyfish and my brain, they didn't care how strong I wanted to be. They didn't care. And yeah, it was also difficult because I would go to YouTube, I would go to the internet. I started to try to find solutions, and the YouTube videos with like many doctors talking about uh, what I found out that I had, which was PVD, uh, posterior vitreous detachment, as a consequence of the cataract surgery I had as a child. Uh, Also produced these myodesopsias. And every time I looked in the internet for something related to this, many doctors saying this is not painful, don't worry, this is not harmful or dangerous to your health. And I was thinking, but this is it. Like, I, I really can't do anything like this. I, this is not a matter of also functionality. Like, I cannot live this way. I, I, I couldn't get out of bed so many mornings and thinking, okay, what is the difference between me and someone who is completely disabled? It felt such a handicap that I couldn't believe that I didn't really find anything interesting in the internet to conclude that this was as critical as I was experiencing it. I'm also going to explain what happened when I went to the emergency room of the hospital, right? Because this happened on the 20th of June during the night. Um, I was really scared. I didn't know if I had a retina problem.
I don't know. I didn't know if I was going to get blind. Still, I think I decided around 2 or 3 a.m. Okay, I'm going to sleep, and I will go uh, to my GP, to my doctor, really early in the morning, which I did. The doctor told me, okay, I cannot test you from here, so just go to the hospital. And I went to the emergency room. I waited for like 2 hours, and they did like an eye check, and they said, well, the equipment we have here is not the same as the hospital for uh, the eye hospital, basically with the specialists. So we cannot test you, like evaluate really well what is going on. But yeah, you seem to have like something in your eye, but it's not serious. And I felt, oof, and I said, yeah, but this is something incredibly, like I can't live like this. I actually see the floaters inside of my eye, even in the darkness. Like I close my eyes in a completely dark room, and I still see them moving all the time. And the doctor from the emergency room in the hospital told me, how is that possible? Almost mockingly. And I thought, okay, this is uh, this is this is not very encouraging. Still, they told me to go to this hospital, which I did, and without any further evaluation, they just told me to get an appointment, and the appointment was like for like 2 months from that day. They gave me the lowest priority because there are like some tiers where you can see the kind of the level of priority they give you to your appointment, right? They gave me the lowest, and I thought, okay, these people are not going to help me. I don't know if I am going to get completely, like, I was pretty much blind already. I had to go to the hospital like almost without any vision at all, with sunglasses, barely getting there. And I thought, okay, these people don't care if I get blind, like completely blind. So when I thought I couldn't rely on the public healthcare system anymore, I started to look for doctors. I saw a doctor who had a 4.9 in Google reviews, and he seemed to be able to treat this. He saw me, and he he told me to undergo through 3 sessions of YAG, laser vitreolysis, which I did. I went there once per month for up to 3 sessions. But here came the second round of, I don't want to call it gaslighting, but more like incompatibility between the unbearable reality I was going through and the external perception. Every time I went to have laser, the doctor told me, you must be improving already. You must be improving. And I was almost scared to say, no, I am not improving at all. The YAG laser vitreolysis, maybe it works for some people. It didn't work for me at all. It didn't dissolve or disperse anything. And actually, I think I was feeling worse. Like I remember I only felt some relief because he would give me a prescription for atropine or atropine. I don't know how to pronounce it. In Spanish, is atropina, and that kind of blur a little bit the jellyfish and all the dirt around it, but it didn't work a lot at all. And when I told him, like after 3 sessions, I didn't see any improvement, he actually got quite defensive, and it made me question a lot again my reality, because I was thinking, okay, this guy has 4.9 in Google. He seems to be like a god. Like even in this hospital, in this private hospital, he seemed to be like someone like wow, right? But it didn't help me, and I had to I had to accept also the fact that it didn't help me. I would say when it comes to acceptance and accepting my own situation, I started to notice that every time the external reality demanded normalcy from me, because the world kept spinning, right? Every time I felt like my condition was minimized, um, I I I felt like I have to keep pushing, to keep going through this, because I felt I was betraying myself. I was betraying my own reality, and this is what I mean with protecting your reality. Once I accepted how critical everything was, I had to protect it from basically anyone or any situation, whereas I would feel like I would betray or abandon this journey. Um, Many relationships transformed because of this. It was a huge wake up call, uh, because once this journey put me in survival mode, um, I started to notice from some people and from some situations, even in my hometown, because I didn't mention that because, well, I didn't think it was relevant, but maybe I will. I left my hometown when I was 24 years old or 25, and I came to my hometown temporarily to plan my move into Thailand, uh, because, well, my girlfriend is here, she's from here, and I was basically putting everything in order to come here. And yeah, I think I had been used for a long time to relationships and situations that would give me scraps, like really poor quality, but it felt familiar. So I was clinging to it. And I am not going to fall into the fallacy that suffering always gives you a lesson. I think this was pure suffering. Um, this journey was really anxiety inducing, and there was a lot of sadness in the situation because you feel powerless, you feel weak. I became extremely sedentary when I have more than not. I have been quite an active person who like to play football, like cycling, like running, like to walk outside a lot, hiking, uh, and I was basically inside in my own bubble of sorrow, and it was pure suffering. But I also want to acknowledge that it gave me some tools, and I think radical acceptance was one of them, to the point that sometimes I would be in bed and I would say to myself, okay, what is your reality right now? Even if you cannot see, even if nothing works right now or nothing makes sense, you are alive and you can breathe. Okay, you can breathe. And sometimes that was everything I had. And this was a huge cleanser also. I At some point I couldn't betray myself any longer, and I had to use this as a shield to reject anything that was not directly beneficial. Any social etiquettes, any plans, any pretending, any performance, any pantomime. I started to have the perfect excuse to say, I don't want it. And actually, if I was, if I didn't have this condition, I don't want it either, because it reminds me of a quote of the HBO show Succession, in which one of the characters, I think is one of the secondary characters, uh, he or she says, "How does it serve my interest?" And that's exactly how I started to feel. Everything that would drain energy from pure survival mode, I started to use this as a shield, and I had to. Once I saw that nothing was going to help me, um, even the Blindness Association in Spain, which is called Fundación Once, which I actually had attended once when I was a little kid because of my congenital cataracts. I called them, and they, because I even thought, okay, if this is it, at least I'm going to see what are my options, right? Um, and they rejected me. They basically say that everything that counts is that I is everything that counts is visual acuity, and they told me that I could still see sometimes. So yeah, I said, okay, this is it, or I keep persisting. I had many days where I was traumatized about my own current day by day, and the same way that I said before that many relationships let me down, including family. I think family um, was a big issue, and maybe I talk later about that a little bit as well. Um, I There was a friend in particular who, at the time, uh, he was hosting me as well after the friend I mentioned before, and he told me to persist. So I started to knock on the door of like 10 different doctors, and many said no. Many talk about the risks, but there were two who actually wanted to see me. And at that point, I was willing to go to the US, to the Netherlands. I saw a guy in Italy. I didn't care anymore. I just wanted to try to find the option that would give me even hope for the day by day. And actually, I found like two different places in Sevilla, in my hometown, and they gave me the appointment for in 3 weeks. And actually, it was the same day, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. So I said, okay, now my Google Calendar is not empty. In 3 weeks, I have something to do, and see if I can keep trying and keep looking, keep searching. So these 3 weeks happen. You can maybe imagine um, a lot of tried audiobooks, podcasts, movies, darkness, uh, pretty much endurance. Uh, my friend helping me with going to supermarket, groceries, anything basic, and yes, and then this day came. So in the morning, I went to this private hospital, and the doctor, she was really really lovely and really charming. It was such a pleasure to have a conversation with her, and she checked my eye, my both eyes. She did an assessment, and the first thing she said was, "Wow, you really cannot see anything." And I said, "Yes, I can't. I can't." And then I see that there is a brain factor in which my brain doesn't want to doesn't want to function with vision. It's like, okay, I can't. And she said, "You are coming here with a smile, and people who have what you have, like a woman last week, she had exactly what you have, and she came crying, and she fell." in the entrance. And I said, well, yeah, I understand. Sometimes I wanted to go for a stroll, for a walk, and I tripped many times with a tree, with something. And she said, we can do it. We can do it because you cannot live like this. But I left that place in the morning and I thought, wow, this might happen. And then I waited for the evenings. Like I was already convinced that this could work out, but I had the other appointment in the evening, and I said, okay, let's have a double. Let's see. And yeah, I saw this other doctor. She also saw me, and one of the questions she asked me was, I don't really know how to say this, so YouTube doesn't, you know, uh, not demonetize the video, but maybe like not enable to be out there. But she asked me, have you thought about or giving up completely? And I said yes. And she said, of course, there is a risk in this surgery, but you also, the YAG laser also has a risk, and you went through it. So if you cannot drive, you cannot hold a job, you cannot do anything, yeah, there is a risk, but nowadays it's possible. It's not like you have a life now. So I left that other place in the evening thinking, I'm going to get cured. I'm going to get cured. The feeling I the feeling I had, because it had been already, I didn't mention that, but it was already in November. I had been 5 months like this already. And yeah, I remember that day I don't want to say euphoric, but I felt really hopeful. And even thinking about how I felt that day makes me feel good right now. Mm, the validation. The validation that finally a doctor, after feeling so surrounded by minimizers, by people, even friendships who told me that this was a mental thing, family who not only like my biological family, let's say, my family of origin, not only did minimize this completely, but they antagonized me quite a bit, putting pressure on me to sign some paperwork and some family issues. It felt really good to have validation from people who matter the most, the professionals. So, also something that I wanted to talk about is that I tried everything, everything. There are some classics in the internet and Reddit, fasting, trying to see to have like a more relaxed life, to see if it's related to anxiety. This vitrectomy pill, which actually the doctor who tried the YAG laser also gave me in a prescription. Pineapple, eating pineapple. Uh, Nothing worked. Okay, nothing, nothing. The only thing that worked for me, and I am already like anticipating basically the end of this video, was Vitrectomy 27G. G, I looked it up, is G for gauge. Uh, and actually the doctor, during the session, she showed me the instruments, because in the end it's an incision, right? And I was a bit, um, I was a bit concerned because it was also not my first surgery in my life where there is something invasive in my eye. She showed me the instrument is like zero point 0.4 millimeters, um, and that really relaxed me quite a bit because I said, okay, yeah, I see that there is an evolution, and before it was like 23G, I think, 25G, and then this one would be like 27G. And when I saw that it was basically like a hair, it was as thin as a hair. I was like, okay, there is going to be an incision, but how bad can it be, right? But yes, coming back to what I wanted to say on all the placebos, I think the only thing that helped me a little bit, of course, sunglasses, living during the night, was staying hydrated, which I think is a good recommendation anyway. Um, I think lifestyle wise, I think staying hydrated. I saw that where I had enough water, especially in the summer, because in Spain in the north hemisphere during the summer is quite hot and you can get dehydrated very easily just by going outside or being exposed to the sun. Um, yes, I remember the days I stayed hydrated. Um, it's not only good for how you feel, your energy, and trying to get outside, even if it felt impossible to go outdoors. But also, the giant jellyfish became a bit more blurry or not so unbearable. Yes. So, the surgery. Um, it was in the 18th of December 2024, another date that I am always going to remember. I had to wait like 2 or 3 weeks after I got this appointment and the confirmation that I would go through it, and we assessed the risks and how my life was. I had a general anesthesia, so I was, how can I say, um, the intervention was 45 minutes. I was sedated. After I was put in a bed, and after 10 seconds, the anesthesiology specialist told me, "You are going to fall asleep in like almost like a hypnosis," And I was not really completely asleep, but like during the summer when you have this kind of like idle afternoon, that you are having like a nap in the couch, and you are kind of awake and aware of everything. Maybe you have the TV in the background, but you don't really care because at that moment you don't really care about anything. That's exactly how it felt. I was kind of aware. I was put like a veil with a hole here in my eye, so they could do their thing. But I didn't notice anything. And actually, this is funny. The only time I remember I woke up a bit more, like, um, how can I say, that I was more aware of my surroundings was because I was about to sneeze, and the doctor told me, please don't. Um, but yeah, it was like a summer nap. In Spain, I always joke that we usually watch the Tour of France to have it in the background, and you don't really care who is winning. Um, it was like that. It was painless. I didn't notice anything, and then I was put a patch here to stay with the patch for like, I think, 3 or 4 days. They told me not to remove it. They told me to rest a lot, and even through the patch, I could already see that they had done something. Um, and 3 days later, I saw that my brain was still adjusting to it. I couldn't really see anything like in a transparent way. It was almost like if I had like a plastic bag between me and the reality in this eye. And I learned that the brain doesn't like changes, even if it's a good change. And because they actually touch in my retina, mm, that's actually kind of connected to the brain. So the brain was like, wow, what is this? I see better. This is much better, but oh, this is a change. So I slept so much that week, and actually it was right before Christmas. So um, yeah, it was just sleeping, sleeping, waking up, eating something, going to the bathroom, sleeping again for a few days. You know, when sometimes in the movies they show someone who had gone through an accident and it's, how many days have you been? How many days have I been sleeping? It was kind of the same experience. I didn't even know anymore what day I was living, and my brain took a while to adjust. I would say that in total it was 1 month until my brain was like, wow, okay, this is actually happening. I see better, and actually I see better now than any other time in my life, because they told me that once they did the incision in my eye, um, they also, you know, the cataract surgery was done in the 80s, right? Maybe more rudimentary than now. So they told me that they also clean some fluff, and yes, I basically see better now than any time in my life. And actually, the this eye is still lazy because the brain doesn't, after 35 years living in one way, the brain is doesn't want to make this eye work more. After sleeping so much during the Christmas weeks, I started to go outside and I started to do things that I couldn't have done before. Mm, the first thing I remember is that after months, after 6 months of not even considering doing that, I I went for a walk in the morning. And actually, it happened that the friend who was hosting me, um, he lived quite near the high school where I went before university. And I remember every time I would go like 7 in the morning to the high school, I was dreading going like, there were like 100 meters from where the bus would stop until I would get to the entrance of the high school. And I for 2 years, I was dreading that little walk so much. The same street, the same morning, because it was 7 in the morning. And I was actually crying with emotion that I could walk again outside during daylight, and I was enjoying the walk so much. And I was thinking, is the same thing but a completely different frame, like 20 years later. And I remember also that day I went to for a coffee. I went to like a terrace for a coffee and reading a book, like a real book, not a screen, like in the darkness, but a real book. And yeah, just being outside in the daylight, not in a room, shutting the curtains, I started to realize what the whole thing really was. It was such a, it felt like a miracle, really. It felt like a second life, like a second chance in life. Uh, and as I mentioned, right, um, many relationships and many situations let me down, including the majority of my family members, even extended family. But this comes with an additional gift, which is the support I had from friends and my so-called chosen family, because I really feel it like family. Because I have spent some years in living in different countries, I had support from friends in Bulgaria, Netherlands, UK, India. Uh, I'm sure I would forget many. And my girlfriend, who for 6 months, every day, she would have video calls with me. She would see a guy that sometimes he was in complete despair, not being able to hold a job, pretty hopeless, not promising a solution to be able to come to Thailand, and she stayed. And my friends, the incredible support I had. I stayed with 4 different friends in their sofa or in their spare room until I could find a solution and actually come to Thailand. Um, and this was a gift. The clarity to see my new family, my chosen family, and the clarity to put myself first, to put myself above everything, to to continue persisting, to see that I actually face one of my biggest fears, because I have been holding the fear of being blind all my life. And I went through one of the rawest and truest fears and nightmares I always have. And I went through it. And it's still a bit traumatic. I am not completely, let's say, cured. And I really hope this video is also therapeutic for me. Um, but now I have, let's say, a normal life, and I don't. Maybe I shouldn't say like a normal life, because a normal life is a different concept for everyone. But now I can work again. I can go to the cinema. I can walk. I can do everything. Like when I announced that I would record this video to people, for people with similar problems, um, one of the questions I got asked was if I'm active again. I can run. I can. Yesterday I was doing like, I don't know, 15 kilometers by bike in a park in Bangkok. I go to the gym several times per week. Um, I am in the treadmill. I lift weights. I um, I do like jumping rope, and yeah, now my girlfriend and I were happily reunited. And actually, to celebrate our reunion, which finally happened in April 2025, we went to Taiwan. Since I was a teenager, I wanted to see the Taipei 101 tower, and the fact that I could hike up, climb up the mountain, and see the tower, that was one of the most moving and emotional moments of my entire life. Just the fact that I could see it again, and I could have like some physical activity to actually get there and to travel um, and to see again, to appreciate the fact that life can be beautiful. It's a place of abundance. It's a place of beauty. There is beauty all around. And yes, I guess if I want to wrap up the title, right? Accepting the reality and protecting your truth. I think this can apply to any struggle that is invisible, mental illness, grief, any disease that is not evident from the outside, any struggle. I would say, if I can say anything to anyone in despair, if I could help a single person with this video, apart from myself, I would say accept your truth, protect it, fight for your healing, find the right environment for you, an environment that is supportive and doesn't minimize the battle that you are going through. And as I mentioned before, the gift of the mental clarity that this gave me, it really improved the signal to noise ratio. Everything that was not my survival, uh, trying to be, trying to keep the people pleasing side of me, trying to put other people above yourself, trying to pretend that you are fine when you are not. You have to protect the truth, to keep fighting to heal. And when I say accepting, is not giving up. It's actually accepting how critical it is, so you can do something about it. You can embrace the, let's say, the criticality of your situation. So you can channel all your energies, no matter how little your energy is, to channel your energy in, like, keep fighting, keep looking for solutions. And I know that the PVD and eye diseases, they can feel pretty hopeless. Um, but I would say, based on my own experience, also with cataracts, that when it comes to progress of medicine, time is always on our side. And we don't even have to talk about eye health. When I was a kid in the 80s, in the 90s, there were diseases that people had that they don't exist anymore, or they are not common anymore. There were surgeries that were extremely risky, extremely complicated, extremely rudimentary, extremely invasive, and now maybe a laser or a 10 minutes procedure can change everything, can really change your life. And I would say, keep looking, keep looking. Maybe you can face people who are going to try to minimize your situation, to tell you that there are no solutions. But maybe something that doesn't have a solution, you just have to wait for it. Why giving up if life can be long as well? Life can be long enough so you can basically wait for a solution to your problem. And I'm not saying that this is like this Canadian company, Pulse Medica. Maybe that's a solution, maybe not. All I'm trying to convey is that the same way that everything changed in 1 second, everything changed in my life. Maybe 1 second of someone finding the right treatment, the right cure, the right surgery, even if for me the solution was vitrectomy, but even if vitrectomy is not for you, maybe there is another solution if you wait enough and you keep finding, you keep fighting for yourself, you keep advocating for yourself. So that's why I titled this video Accept Your Reality and Protect It, because for me that was the way to keep fighting, to keep fighting. And now I can see, I can see, I can record this video. I postponed 9 months to find the right moment for me to feel useful to others. But don't give up. Don't give up. I am looking to you right now. I can see the camera I'm looking at. And I want to tell you to not give up. And this is the first time ever that I record a video like this. I didn't intend to open like a standard YouTube channel, but if enough people see this video, and maybe I feel myself, I record myself more videos about this or other topics, I think you will help me to know if this would be a good idea by liking this video, subscribing to my channel. You know the drill. And now it's almost 6 p.m. here in Bangkok when I'm recording this. So I'm going to watch the sunset.